But thank you, Renata. But we will get going with who's here, and whoever can join us a little later, they're welcome to pop in, and we will welcome them as they do so.
I
The
just hope
first,
there's not a problem with the link.
yes, I know. I've turned my phone silent, but I don't have any texts or well, I've got a lot of emails on here, but I don't know if it's anyone. Let me just do one check of
Yeah,
email.
just to be sure.
That's a good thought, Liz. Thank you.
And
No,
Mary's on holidays this week, so I don't know who's monitoring the
Yeah, because my
office
week
emails.
was off a bit.
yeah. Okay. And one text just came in. Nope, that's fine. That's my daughter. She can hang on there. So what I would like to do first is just turn to the agenda. Well, it's not really an agenda. It's an outline that I sent to you. And thank you, Renata, very, very much. And this truly is an outline. It's for my benefit more than anything that before we leave today, I would like to be able to cover these things. I am not stuck to how that happens particularly. I really want you to ask your questions, and us to have the discussions in real time. So as it comes up or as it twigs with you, please do ask your questions as we go along. And then at the end, of course, if there's anything else remaining, we will entertain whatever you might have. But just as a quick review on what we want to do, the first thing is I do want to start out with the report form. Just to look at things about where it's due, who it's sent to, who the author is, what are the funds and what was accomplished. Just so we are familiar and reconnected with that form again. For most of us, if we've done this form before, it's been a year almost since we've done it and we forget. And we have one change to it this year that I'll note for you. Then I really want to get into what is the most helpful for those reading these reports, and hopefully what will make it the most enjoyable for you to fill them out and for us to read them, and for our membership down the road when they get the composite of all the annual reports to enjoy reading them and not just have it a compilation of data and statistics. So I do want to talk about that. Then we're going to all contribute, because boy, have we ever got some great experience and wisdom on this screen this morning, even with those of us who are here. So what are some of the helpful tips and tricks that we can do in completing a form so that it is useful for you, it's useful for us reading it, and it's really engaging information that we can take to the members as a whole? All right, so that's what we want to accomplish. But as I said, I am not this afternoon stuck to a rigid agenda. Moving then to we will turn our eyes to the report form. And Renata's got that for us too to put on the screen so we can look at it together. And just a little bit of a zoom on that, please and thank you. Thanks perfect, Renata. Thank you very much. So note that the date is January 31st for everybody. So everyone gets it at the same time. The beauty of electronics is that you now, right from the primary chapter, can send it everywhere. You are not relying on a provincial chapter to send it on. You're not relying on your secretary to send it on. You as the education officer can send it everywhere it needs to go at once. It's very, very clearly outlined now at the top of every single report form where it needs to go. So obviously, as a primary education officer, you want it to get to your provincial education officer. So that's up to you to know who that is and what her email address is. Then you want it to your provincial secretary. And again, up to you to know who that person is and what her email is, except in Ontario. And Ontario's goes to a generic email address where it can be gathered, where all of them, as it does to national. So when you're sending it to the national office, you have the email address there, and that is a generic email that all officers can access and read all forms, which is a phenomenal new advantage of our electronics as of last year. And it made it so much easier. The other wonderful thing is now that you're not relying on your provincial officers to send them on, the electronic world has made it that you just do it once. You put in 4 email addresses, your provincial education officer, your provincial secretary or Ontario's, your national officer, and you do that once. And once you push that button and send, it's sent, and it goes in all the right places all at once. The beauty for national officers is we start seeing these coming in January, and we don't have to wait until April to quickly wade through almost 100 reports. We can start doing it and chop away at them a little bit at a time, which means that we get more enjoyment because we have more time to actually read them. But also it means now we are really looking for a little more than numbers and stats. We want some juicy details so that we can really get into it. Your information is really important. And please fill the whole thing in, because I'll tell you a particular thing that I end up with. Some people do handwrite them and have someone scan them and send them on, which is absolutely fine, no problem. But sometimes by the time it's scanned and then it's emailed, it gets blurry. Mm-hmm. And I may not be able to read by the time it gets to me as a scanned document. I may not be able to read clearly what you've put in there. It might be a number, it might be a word, it might be who knows. So I do at times need to reach out to people. So please, it's very helpful that information is accurate at the above. The next thing I really want to emphasize is if you do not have an education initiative this year, and some small chapters do not every year, please tick that box and send it in anyway, because it means that if I find out that IODE Pleasant Valley has not got an education report, that I'm not going to try and track them down. I can tick it off as a nil report, and I'm not trying to find out who the education officer or the president is and say, why is this? Is there a report coming? Have you put it in snail mail and it's still out there, or what the situation is? Liz?
I was just going to say that this doesn't have to be filled in by an education officer. There are
good point.
Who said no report because they don't have an education officer, but it could be filled in by somebody else. And that's
excellent point.
So that we know that when there's a tick there, it means there was no education report at all.
Yeah, but thank you.
I noticed it with services. So
yes, no, that's a really good point. And the next one as well. If your chapter wishes to adopt a school in Northern Ontario, Labrador, just tick the box. And as Liz said, if it's your president doing it or one of your or your secretary doing it, just to do a nil report, just tick the box, because we will pass. If it's a yes, we will obviously make sure that the appropriate convener gets that information. Then in the middle part, we've become clearer and clearer over the years about what goes where. I do still get questions about, well, is this a local student or is this a local school? But not very many. I do still get the odd question about, does this qualify as in school or outside of school? But not very many, because we've given examples, and we do a lot of education work in the community that's not affiliated with a school. And people are really, really good at digging those out and identifying them. Really, really good. And then provincial, we had the question yesterday, what happens if you do a Born to Read program, but it is not a provincial-led program, that it's just an individual primary chapter? Then by all means, put it on the left-hand side of that page. We have provincial chapters who do it as a coordinated effort. And then if you are contributing to the Born to Read project of the provincial chapter, then it would go on the right-hand side. But if you are doing 20 book bags for the JKs coming into school and your chapter's doing them all on their own and presenting them at that school, that is definitely on the left-hand side within your local schools. All right. And then down at National, this is where there is the addition this year. You'll see at the very bottom of that list is the IODE Violet Downey Book Award Fund. As you know, you've heard over the last year that we do now have enough funds for 2025, but there are not enough funds for 2026. So we've opened up that fund, and we definitely welcome contributions there from either individuals or from chapters. So we've added that line to the education report. That's the only difference. All right. And then we get to the total value, which is fine, but we have so much more than just the money that's expended. And I would love to see an additional page, a page just all on its own that is the narrative. We really want you to tell your story. What's an interesting initiative you've done? What is so good because it's bigger or better or different this year than last year? You gave out 3 awards this year instead of 1 for STEM candidates. And the impact of those was unbelievable. You had 10 applications this year for 1 award that you gave out. You had 30 schools apply for grade 8 history awards this year instead of the average of 25. And in that, there were 3 more developmental classes that were highlighted for the history awards. Anything at all. And we really want the narratives. And we're going to talk about that more as a group in a moment. But that's what that box is down there. And also, if you do initiatives that do not have monetary value, that not money going through the chapter, we want to know about it, because those volunteer hours are so key. Those volunteer donations of time or money are so key. And that's where you're going to really show off, is in that bottom box. And we'll talk more about that in a moment too. So before we take this off the screen, just call out if you've got any question whatsoever about the form before we go on to our discussion. And you have to call out because I only see 2 of us on my screen as far as putting your hand up.
Mine is a technical question.
Yes,
please. In the past, we have really, most of us now work on iPads. And
yes.
In the past, we have had a really difficult time filling the form out on iPads. Has that problem been addressed?
Myrna, I cannot answer that question.
Okay.
I know nothing about iPad use, so I am useless in this. Renata, can you stop sharing the screen so I can see the people again? Thank you so much. Anyone who's on the screen right now, our iPad user down there, Bobby Joe or Helen or anybody, do you have any information in regards to the ease at which, Renata, or any tips or tricks?
I can't fill it on my iPad. I have to use a laptop.
Okay.
So I'm not techie, so I can't. Luckily I have an iPad here. I mean, I have a laptop here, but I don't know what to say to do because I haven't figured that out yet.
Okay, so there isn't a workaround right now. To do the fillable form, you do need a laptop or a PC.
There probably is a way, but I don't know how. I don't know.
We're playing with it as well. I too have a laptop I can do it on, but I know various members of our chapter have said trying to do it on the iPad is really, really difficult.
Okay. Myrna, thank you for the question. And Bobby Joe, thanks for the answer. And I watched Renato nod her head. and say, yeah, no, that's the way it is. Unfortunately, it's doesn't work off the iPad. Liz?
I just had a question. Have you tried the fillable Word form versus the fillable PDF? Is that one of those easier to use?
I have not had success. I've tried doing it on the iPad. I have not had success with it, so I have moved over to my laptop
Right.
to do
I
it.
know, I just wonder whether
yeah.
which one of those formats you were trying to use on the iPad.
I tend to try to use the Word one, but
Right.
I just find that it doesn't line up properly.
Yeah, I know. I tried it for a while and then went back to my computer, but
Yes.
Helen, did you have something to add?
Not just another question. So
Yes,
are we finished here? Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Under the total education amount, at one time we used to include the adopted school. Do you still want the adopted school included there?
Oh, no, no. So the second page, I'm sorry, I didn't go to the second page. The second page of the form, Renata, I'm sorry, are you still there to put the form back up? I apologize. I was going to let you off the hook there. All right. So it is now all one form. They are not two separate forms. So thank you, Helen, for bringing that up, because the second page is devoted to either a Northern Ontario or Labrador school. So the total amount of money that your chapter has spent on adopted schools goes in that top half of the form. That includes if you have individuals in your chapter who are supporting them on their own, and if you have a chapter one that you're supporting. So we had the question yesterday. This form as it is now is not that compatible with a big chapter who might have, let's say, one classroom that the chapter supports and then 3 classrooms that 3 individual members supports. So it would be up to the 3 individual members to give their totals to the adopted schools person in the chapter. So you could get the totals. Number of adopted classrooms, that would be 4. Number of individuals with adopted classrooms would be 3. Total number of students assisted would be the total out of the 4 schools. Then if you go down to the bottom half, and the total amount of money would be the total amount of money that was spent on those 4 classrooms by the chapter and the 3 individuals. Then down at the bottom, you've only got room for 1 chapter adopted class and 1 individual's adopted class. So you have 2 choices. You can copy this form and do it again, fill it out again and have a page for each one, have multiple pages, or you can put the details of the other schools in the text box. So it is more complicated when you've got multiple classrooms out of the same chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And is that the way that you've been doing it as well with the chapters in Ontario who have multiple classrooms?
I don't think we've run into that problem yet.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, it was a question yesterday. A chapter altogether had 5 classrooms, 2
wow.
that the chapter took on and 3 that individuals took on. And we just sort of problem solved it at the time because I hadn't had it come to me as a question before that either.
Mm-hmm.
But we definitely want the activities to be a consolidation of all the classrooms that have been adopted. Okay? Mm-hmm. Even though all of that money didn't go through your treasurer.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Renata. Any other questions about the form before we move on? Bev?
This is in the form of a comment, and actually it's for the education people who made up the report. The report that's there is the best report that I have seen in a very long time.
Well, we can thank the collective wisdom of the Education Committee 2 years ago, because 2 years ago, the Education Committee spent quite a lot of time really going over forms. And that's when we consolidated education in adopted schools, because we had had a lot of concerns with people having to find 2 forms and load 2 forms. We wanted it as a sequential. And then the little bits and pieces, last year, there was a lot of work done by Ontario last year, and under Helen's leadership, and then 2 years ago, and then Lisa Kosar's leadership last year, and they passed all of their comments through the committee, and there were more changes made. So the last 2 years, thanks to the committee and thanks to Ontario's committee at going through it with a fine-tooth comb, we had so much input and we could make changes to make it easier. So Bev, I really, really appreciate you even noticing that. You've been around for a while. You've seen many, many iterations of this form through your time. And Helen, I imagine, appreciates your comments as much as I do, because she really spearheaded that Ontario group to get those reviews done. So thank you. Liz?
Yeah, and I just wanted to remind people, we don't have a lot of people on the meeting, but you recorded, is that individuals who have adopted a school that's not in either Northern Ontario or Labrador do need to include on page 1, the regular education report, any local schools. We have a number of schools in our local area that we have informally adopted, if you will, and want to make sure that all of those initiatives are described in detail. And I know that you'll come back to the fact that the numbers aren't the be all and end all. The numbers are important because they get reported to Revenue Canada. And, you know, we need to celebrate all the amazing things that we do, but the anecdotal information for classrooms, for students in the local communities that are supported in the education field is really critical.
Well, you'd think I would have paid her for that transitional comment. And thank you, Liz, very much, because that's exactly where I'd like to go next. Right. So first of all, I'm going to be very, very selfish, and I'm going to speak with my national education officer's hat on, and say, what do I enjoy the most and what is most helpful to me when I start reading these reports? And that's where it came on the outline I gave you. First of all, that the form is complete, because that means that I don't have to go chasing people down or finding out information. So that's the number one. But the second thing is the narrative. I want to know, it's very nice if in that box at the bottom it says, we gave out 10 $100 subject awards at such and such a school last year for $1,000. Okay, that's fine. But as Liz said, that's not the story. That's the data. All right, we spent $1,000. You told us that up above, but it's not the story. The story is the who, what, where, why, when, and how. Good old journalism reporting. So what were the awards for? Where were they given? For what were they given? How did this come about? Maybe the award was in memory of someone. Maybe the award was there because the school asked you for some help. Maybe you had a liaison with the school and through a conversation you found out that this was really needed. How did that come about? Those are the kinds of things we want to know. And the most important thing is, do you have any feedback whatsoever about the impact of what you've done? All right? The impact of what you've done. Now, before I talk about it, I'd like to know, anyone who's on the screen this afternoon, where are you getting your impact information? How was that award? How was that gift? How was that book? How is that time you spent? How did that impact the recipient? Where are you getting that kind of information from that you could report it back to your chapter, or you could report it on your annual form, or you could talk about it in the community, or you could talk about it with your chapter members. So ideas, where are you getting the impact information from? Helen?
I've been an education officer for my chapter, I think, for decades. And I always tell them that after, when I give them the presentation, or usually it's on stage at the high school, when I'm shaking their hand, I'll say, I'd like to meet you after to take a picture. And so most of them will say, sure. And so we meet for a picture of them. And then during the picture taking, I will say that our chapter members really like to hear about you. So can you just do a little thank you note so we can read it at the meeting, and that way they know that, this is a worthwhile bursary or, award, whatever it is.
Okay, so I heard 3 things in there, Helen. I heard 1, when possible, go in person to deliver the award, because even that in-person meeting, you can get information from your liaison wherever you're doing the award, from the recipient if you meet the recipient, or from the group itself when you're there. So that's the first thing I heard. The second thing I heard is that you were asking them for a bio in official terms, but you were doing it in friendly terms. We'd really like to hear about you. We'd really like to know a little something about you. Could you tell us something about you? And maybe you're going to get it verbally, and maybe you're going to get it in writing, or maybe you're going to get it from the guidance counselor at the school who's going to give you a little bit of background or a bio, or they're going to give you the application form that they put in to go for the award, wherever, lots of places. And the third thing I heard you say is asking for a thank you note. And maybe that thank you note comes from you asking the recipient themselves, and you've given them a rationale, Helen. That's what I love. You've said, I'd really like to share this with our chapter members. Could you give us a thank you note so that I can share this with everyone? And maybe it's not directly asking for it from the recipient. You might be asking for it from your liaison at that school or the community center or the shelter or wherever you are giving that award. So I like it. You had 3 things in there, all of them excellent. All right, other ideas, and then I'm going to ask you about when and how you're going to report on those kinds of things. So any other ideas about where you get your impact information from?
I'd just like to say thank you for the idea of the thank you, because I'm in the process right now of reminding our bursary recipient that she needs to send us her first term and second term registration. And I love the idea of the thank you, because I can now say to her, we'd love to know how you're doing. So yes. that's a great idea. And we liaison closely with our elementary school community coordinator to find out what the school needs, for the students, for volunteer hours, those kinds of things. But I love that idea of the thank you. Thank you.
And it may need to be that you ask your contact at the location to nudge them a little bit for that thank you note, because unfortunately our kids aren't all taught today that thank you notes are the thing to do. I think our mothers did a very, very good job with us, but I'm not so sure that's high on the priority list for young people today. So we might need, that might need a real nudge. Liz?
I was just going to say, one of the delights we get when we give book bags with brand new books to kindergarten students is that the teachers then collect information from the students. Tell us about something, one of the books that were in your book bag and how much you liked it, and the kids will draw us little pictures. The other thing that we have been able to give is these Lego activity boxes. I don't know, through First Book Canada, they got a big donation of Lego boxes for kids, and they're in a cube, about 9 inches cubic. No, it should be metric. And they're just random pieces of Lego. And in there were all sorts of ideas about the things that kids could build, but without the usual, I don't know, Lego gives you these wonderful little plans of how you build the item that's on the outside of the box. But because these are random pieces, it was, can you build a rocket ship? And why would you build a rocket ship? And the kids have now started, because the teachers remind them, to send us back these huge, we've just got the cards from the 3 kindergarten classes at one school, which are on large pieces of paper with the kids having drawn pictures, talked about the things they really enjoyed. For some of the kids, their writing is really hard to understand, so the teachers translate it. But getting that, we pass it around at meetings, that everybody looks at that. So for older kids who maybe aren't in that point where the teachers are reminding them, we actually include a thank you when we donate things. And we put a stamped self-addressed envelope and a little card that, we have printed off with IOD. We'd love to hear about you. So it's, we've saved them having to write it and send it, mail it. Who knows how long it'll take for these to come now. But we just put a small card with, some printing on it, and please tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're at in your education thing. And it's sad that we still have to do that, but, it's not that hard for us to collect some stamps and send those around. That's
a great idea, Liz. It really is, having a self-addressed envelope and card for that information. Yeah. Natalie, is it Natalie or Natalie?
Natalie.
Natalie, welcome. Yes. And so great to see you. Very, very good. I love that idea. The other thing I was going to suggest, if when you have the contact with the liaison person or the teacher or whatever, the other thing is to ask them so what or a how question about the difference that the gift has made. So what difference has this gift, I'm going to say gift because you don't know if it's a gift certificate, a gift card, an actual check, a book, whatever, or Lego. What difference has this book made, or how was this gift used? Those are, that type of an open question. That's a what or a how question, because that keeps it very open-ended. That's another way you can prompt a reply. Also, if you've got a good relationship or rapport with that liaison person, be it a teacher, a guidance counselor, whomever, I've just heard someone say, Myrna, I think it was, say that the confirmations are coming in now about registration. So if you know about the time, you can always prompt your liaison to say, I have a meeting coming up in the middle of October. We would love to hear how the bursary was used by Susan Jones this year, so we could share it with the chapter. So you can even get as specific as that to sort of edge it on, and it's a pleasant nudge as opposed to a kick in the ass, It's just that little bit, but of way that you might help them understand what we want to hear. I remember one letter that we received at our chapter, and it was about a $1,500 nursing bursary. And the letter we got from this young woman that year was just outstanding. But she said, she made one comment, and we put it in so many times. Without that $1,500 in the timely manner that it arrived, I would not have been able to pay my portion of the first and last month's rent for my apartment. And that was just so big, because it's something we could all identify with. This person needed all of a sudden to dole out a big chunk of money in order to secure the apartment. And the money had come through for her in May for the next year. And so she had that money before summer, before she started to work and have some dollars come in. And it made a huge impact on us. Oh my goodness, this is what we were able to do. So whatever you can do to urge those. So it might be verbal, it might be written, it might be from the recipient, it might be from your liaison person, but ask what it's done. I love the fact that Liz brought up the Lego, because when you donate items to a library, to a classroom, to a community center, to a shelter, you don't know what happened to those items that they said they needed, but you don't know after you delivered them. You're just not sure.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect example of after the fact. You can ask for some pictures. You can ask for some verbal comments from the shelter director or whoever your liaison is to get that information back. Those are the juicy details, the interesting, engaging facts that I love to read in that bottom box, and that are so wonderful to be able to insert in an annual report for everyone to read. So however creative you can get and come up with is definitely welcomed. Any other ideas about how you oh geez, I just put the wrong, trying to get back into this computer. How you can get information for your narrative that's interesting, engaging. And I'm not just talking for the national annual report or the provincial annual report. I'm talking about for your chapter too. So, and that's the most important thing, so that your chapter members understand how much that Lego meant to that preschool class or wherever it went.
And it was so successful with the schools that we're actually now going to, we got 36 of these Lego boxes last year. So we haven't used them all. So we're actually going to send some to a seniors home.
Oh, wow.
But services, not education perhaps, but just, you know, a great way to keep stimulating seniors living in care facilities. So we're going to send a couple of boxes of Lego and see whether they enjoy putting together whatever.
Well, that is phenomenal.
So it kind of hangs over into other areas, but
yes, absolutely. All right, I'm going to digress here a little bit to another item. Our main three areas in IOD, as we all know from our mission statement, are to support education, services in the community, and citizenship. And I think we can all agree, whether we've been in IOD for a year or for decades, that those three areas are not cylinders onto themselves. They are constantly moving and working together, and there are gray areas between. And where the line between education and services is, it's a constantly moving line. Education and citizenship, constantly moving line. And most often, we have projects that are any two of those or any three of those at one time. So I want to talk a little bit about how in your chapter you come to an agreement each year at the end of the year, what is going to go under each department. So the easiest one to do is hours. All right, the hours spent. Let's not talk about money right now. Let's just talk about hours. So if your chapter sponsors a snack program at your school, and you've got 3 people in your chapter who rotate who's delivering the snacks to the school every month, and they spend 4 hours, going out and doing the shopping and driving and delivering those snacks to the school, who counts the hours? Education, services, or citizenship? This is the easiest one, guys. Helen?
I'm going to say it's citizenship, because all hours go to citizenship.
Absolutely. So that's an easy one. It doesn't matter.
Can I share a little thing that Lisa Kassar, our provincial officer, told me? She's our provincial education officer.
Yes.
She said, if it nourishes the belly, it's services. If it nourishes the mind, it's education. If it nourishes the heart, because you're giving, it's citizenship.
All right. And my big question is for that. I love it because she shared that yesterday and I absolutely love it. Bev, I will get you. I will get you in a minute. How did you arrive at that? So I'm just going to leave it there. I don't want an answer yet, Helen. But my question yesterday is, how did you come up with belly, mind, heart and put them and make them analogous to one of the areas? So I will come back to that. Bev, we'll get you and then Liz.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I got exactly what Helen got a way back.
Yeah.
It must have been going around.
Yes, I think so. Liz?
I look at it with Helen's idea or Linda's idea in mind, but the statement that the hours are all recorded on citizenship. The statements that we have 3 members who deal with this thing that is an education because it stimulates feeds the mind, goes on the education report. If it feeds the belly, it goes on the services report. That's the money that's spent. Tell me about the time that is spent doing it, but please make sure that all of the hours for everything that chapter members do for others in the community, those totals have to go on citizenship.
Yes. Yeah. That's why I said that was
final total is all on citizenship, but please tell me on the services report or the education report, and I nag people in chapters in BC, which is getting easier because unfortunately there are fewer and fewer of us. Tell me on the services report if you're doing something that is services and that those hours have been recorded in citizenship.
Yeah.
And because I'm provincial education officer, tell us what you're doing for education. Tell us that you've got members spending these hours, but make sure the total goes on citizenship.
Yeah. Thank you, Liz. Thank you for emphasizing that. Because as we said, that's the easy question, right? Yeah. Hours or citizenship, doesn't matter how we spend them, our volunteer hours or citizenship. Now, I'm going to go back to Helen or Bev. And when you came up with feeds the belly, feeds the mind, feeds the heart, and what you linked it to, how did you arrive at that?
I think the interesting part is when you look at something like Snack Pack is reported under services. So when you provide your snacks for the schools, that goes under services because you're feeding the belly. Also, like things like books. Now, this is where it gets tricky because you could be giving books as part of your service part because they're in the special bags, but the books are there because you're not eating them, you're not wearing them, but it's for the mind. So really, those books should go under education.
All right. So no matter what,
a
conversation needs to be had.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
And this is the key. I don't know whether the belly, mind, heart is the right thing for your chapter or not. But I think the important thing is to come up with the agreement. And it may not be a blanket agreement. You might decide this year that works. And then next year you have a new initiative and you say, but is this citizenship or is this education? We're doing this history project in our schools, and it's in our schools and it's the teachers that are leading it. But we believe that the history topic part is citizenship. So where are we going to put this? So You
Mhm.
need to have the conversation, talk it out, and agree about it in your chapter.
Mhm.
Because maybe it's so gray. Now, let me just say this part. In your narrative, tell it in education. In your narrative, tell it in citizenship. I don't even care if it's the exact same paragraph going in both of those reports, because it is both. And make it as juicy and creative and interesting and impactful as you possibly can, and use it in both places. But if you expended $500 to produce the resources or the awards that you gave out, now you have to have another conversation. Is it going under education or citizenship, or are they splitting it? Are they going 250 education, 250 to citizenship? And you know what? It does not matter. It's what your chapter thinks is most reasonable. There's only two provisos. You cannot double, please, not that you cannot, it's easy to do. You please don't double count the actual funds that go in and out of your treasurer's bank account. That's the only thing. So the most important thing is to decide through a conversation with your chapter, and then announce it to your chapter. You know, Helen's the education officer in our primary chapter, let's say, and I'm the citizenship officer. And we've had this project being very successful in our school. And we go to the chapter and say, we've had a conversation with the president. This is what we've come up with. And this is what we've agreed upon. Is anyone, you know, that's where we've come to in our discussions. Does anyone think that this is out of line? Or, you know, bring it back to the chapter, or just tell them, just say, we've decided, the two of us, this is the way we're going to do it.
Yep.
But it's the conversation that is the most important part of it, because the initiatives are very, very much blurred a lot of the time. Helen?
I know in our chapter right now, we have all received our annual report forms from the president. We are going to fill them out, and then we are meeting. All the officers are meeting, and we will go over, each officer will read their annual report. They'll check with the treasurer to make sure we have the right amounts. And this way we have our discussions, like you said, you know, so it's like, especially something like, you know, the snack packs that we give to the schools, or, you know, the book bags with the books in them, things like that. So that's when we have our report there. And you're right, just reporting them once is the important part.
Reporting the money once.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. That's the part you've got to be careful of. You could report the narrative. It might go three places. It might go in the secretary's report, in the citizenship report, and in the education report, or if it's services that you're doing a joint project with. So we don't care how many times it's repeated. And someone made that comment at our annual meeting once. Oh my goodness, I've heard this 3 times. Yes, you have, because that's how many departments that it falls under. And you're probably going to hear it in the treasurer or the secretary's report about fundraising.
Yeah.
We had an event, a book sale, and the $2,000 from the book sale was devoted to the community center or to the shelter for X, Y, and Z. And then it's in those two officers' reports. That's okay. Go for it. You know, it doesn't matter how many times the narrative appears. So
I found that the advantage of having all of those reports last year online is sometimes chapters have hinted that they've actually done something that's services or education, but I had to go to the secretary's report to find out how they raised the money and what they did with it. So if you can report it multiple times, not the money per se, but the purpose of the money raised or spent, it makes everybody's job easier. And the other thing that I found is really critical is that we might, as a chapter, do something, but another chapter could go, well, we could modify that to work for us. You know, we're not an enormous chapter. We don't have 70 members. but we can do a lot with 12 members. And other chapters might be able to look at our things and go, oh, we can modify that and use it. So
And that is one, and that is definitely, that's definitely one of the goals of the provincial and national education officers, services officers in general. Yeah. When they are trying to do the consolidated report, they are doing it for a documented history of what's happened, and they're doing it so that it will benefit other chapters and share the ideas.
Yeah.
So again, the narrative is, for me, when I'm reading them, the most important. I'm going to get the numbers off there, and thanks to Helen, plug them into my Excel spreadsheet. But so I can get totals. But at the end of the day, when I start writing, I need those lovely details and little surprising hints and interesting things to really, really warm my heart and make it feel like, oh my goodness, this is amazing what work we're doing out there right across the country. All right, I want to talk about how we can best record our initiatives through the year so we don't have to do all the scrambling in December and January to collect the information. So I would like some ideas from people about how do you record your initiatives from January to December, because education initiatives, service initiatives, they're not going to happen every month, but they're going to happen throughout the 12 months. And it may be a regular thing you do every year, or it may not be. So how do you record them through the 12 months so that when you get to December and you have to start compiling things, that it is not a big task? Ideas, strategies. Where or how? Where do you record? How do you record?
Well, I don't want to dominate this, but my chapter has years ago developed a form that we put on one side of the page the hours that we have devoted to IOD activities. And, you know, people were expected to sort of put in the hours and record how they were volunteering for what. And then on the other side of the page, we had a place for all of the donations that we might have made individually, because the chapter keeps the records of the things that the chapter is doing. And so that was on a separate sheet of paper, and we did on two completely different colored papers so that people would keep track of it. And, you know, I would do that religiously, and then I'd lose the piece of paper, or I'd put it in the wrong place in my folder. And what I encourage our chapter to do right now is to use these wonderful planners, whatever you want to call this calendar thing, because there's a column on, and this is assuming that everybody does it, but in some form where people record things, it's called Things to Remember on the right-hand side column. And I, you know, write in the days when I have board meetings, or if I've worked on education for the BC or whatever on the day, and then at the end of the month, I tally them up. So how many boxes of books I personally donated to the Salvation Army one month. I moved this year, so there's lots of donations happening, but also how much time I spent on education, how much time I spent attending or reading minutes for NAC. And all of that I tally on the right-hand column. And I can pass that on to the appropriate officers at a meeting. Or at the end of the year, I can then quickly tally all of that up and hand it over to the services officer. This is the services stuff I've done, or the education things I've done. And that works really well for me. And a number of the members of our chapter are using that in their personal calendars, or they're sticking with the one pages.
So that's a great way. And I started doing that 2 years ago, and it's made a big difference for me to do it as I go along, particularly the volunteer hours. And I do it in a different color from the rest of the things. So I know that the red are my volunteer hours that I spend, and I put it over at the side, November 20th, 4 hours, or whatever it is. And then I can add them up very easily beforehand. So that's a great way for volunteer hours. What happens if you are the education officer, the service officer, whatever, and you've worked on an initiative this month? It's been the time for the all right, I'll go back to the nursing bursary. In February, I have to go out and I have to ask for the applications at the school for the nursing bursary. And then I know in April, I contact the liaison person, the guidance counselor at the school, to see if they need any further information. And then in May, I'm going to contact them again to see if they've got the person and the bio, and so it goes. And then I'm going to get the check to them. So where do you record that initiative so that you have the information about who the person was and maybe the thank you note or the input? But when it comes around in December, 6, 7, 8 months later, you have that information readily at hand. How do you do that?
Are you addressing that to me or everybody?
No, the group, Liz, just anyone in the
I'll
group.
keep out of it for now.
Myrna, any suggestions?
Well, I keep a Google document report every month, so that I record what initiatives we've done and how the chapter has supported our assisted school, those kinds of things. And then at the end, when I go to do my report, I can go back through all of those documents. And I do like the idea of keeping the hours separately, though, and just kind of, oh yes, we did, in May we did this, in February we did this, similar kinds of things in the sense of, when I have to get the information for the bursary to the schools, and then as the bursaries come in, I have a way of recording those. So yes, I just keep a Google document throughout the year, which I then, basically that becomes my report for the chapter in the month, and I share it with the secretary. But I have it so at the end of the year I can go back through it and see, oh yes, we did this in February, we did this in April.
Excellent. So I've picked up two things there. One, an electronic document that it's an ongoing record of month to month about what has to happen. You can even pre-fill it in if you know that there are timeline issues and you don't want to miss a timeline. So an electronic monthly report. The other thing that what was it you said at the end? I picked up on. Oh, shoot. It's gone out of my head.
A summary.
Oh, to the chapter. Yes, thank you. So those chapter reports are key. That if you get into the, hopefully your chapter has a spot on its agenda every time it meets that says education, services, citizenship, all the convenerships, so that there's an opportunity for every officer and every convener to report what's gone on since the last meeting. So those reports that you give to the chapter are critical for you, so that you don't have to write it all up in December. If you've done 4 of them through the year, verbally to your chapter, you might have shown pictures around the room somehow to the chapter, or you might have sent pictures out via email when they've come in, so you've shared them. And you have a written report even that you're giving to your secretary to put in your minutes. Half of your work is done with those chapter reports. So Myrna, thank you for those 2 items. So chapter reports and electronic records that you keep it monthly. I think Helen, you had your hand up.
Yes, I found that I have a sheet, a little template here, that for each school, I have the principal's name, the administrative assistant or secretary, and these are the elementary schools, the grade 8 teacher, Then I have the award winners we've got 3 awards for each school. And then I have the presentation night that it's going to be given and who presented it. And I have those as almost a template. Now, if the principal, usually it's the principal that changes or the grade 8 teacher, I can go in there and easily change that once I find out at the beginning of the year. But that makes it really handy to pass on to any information. Like if you have the emails there, plus the phone number of the school too. I forgot to mention that. You have the school's phone number. And so the contact information is there, and you don't have to go searching for it each time you want to contact the school.
Yeah, I've done one up as well.
And what does yours include, Natalie?
The email, contact name, email, the name of the principal, the name of the secretary, because I just deal with the secretaries. I'm not allowed in the schools.
No. Okay.
So I go as far as the secretary desk and I just go in there. We give out grade 8 awards. We have 2 elementary schools in Godrich. So that's all I'm involved in, is giving out the grade 8 check, and it goes towards plaques, or it'll be an end of school field trip. And then we do a bursary award for a high school student.
Excellent.
And we give them that. And then in September, we'll do money towards the nutrition program.
All right.
But you're saying, I'm just listening to you saying about the Feed the Belly, which I'm wondering if this nutrition, we call it a nutrition program, but I don't know the money's going to nutrition.
Oh, you mean you just give the money to the school and you don't know that they're buying food?
No, I have no idea what they're doing.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I've actually emailed them yesterday to even acknowledge receiving the check, because I didn't receive a thank you or anything, which I thought was very rude on behalf of the school, not to even acknowledge it. $750.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's significant.
So again, as I say, I can't get past anybody other than the secretaries. I don't live in Godrich. I live outside Godrich, so I can't go into the schools myself either. So I'm doing everything by email. Yeah, and I've only just become I've only just become education officer this year.
And that is a challenge. So you've got the telephone and you've got email, and those are your 2 ways if you're not allowed into the schools. Everything has to be in that manner. And the thing that I might suggest you on that one is, in an email, ask for a particular time with the secretary that you could have a phone call, and then she sets it, as opposed to you trying to get her when it's a super busy part of the day. Like before lunch, and after lunch is going to be super busy. Entry and exit of the school is going to be super busy. So, whatever her time of the day is, she can try and set the time for a phone call. It might be after school. She might want it at 4:00 when they've got all the kiddies, make sure that they're safely away. You don't know, but that is difficult if you're not allowed in the school.
Right. And they have, like, I do have some responses, but to my email they've come back to. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good luck, because that is a barrier. Helen, suggestion?
I was just going to suggest that maybe she should, at a time when you're doing your budget, just email them and let them know that you are working on the budget with your chapter, and that you wondered if they were still interested in having the money going toward that nutrition program and how it was used last year. See, I know with our chapter, we've been given the stewardship of 2 sisters whose mother used to work at a school. When the mother passed away, these 2 sisters donate to our chapter. And then they ask us to donate to this school, and it's for the grade 8 program. But the school has to report back to the sisters on how the money was spent. And And based on that information of how the money was spent, the sisters decide whether they're going to donate again in the following year.
Right, right.
And it is an important part, but IODE doesn't just give money to groups to do with as they wish. And I think, Helen, your idea of approaching the schools at the chapter's budget time, but it is important to us that we wish the money that we're giving the school to be used for the nutrition program, and how important that is to, education. But that emphasis that we really need to know that the money is being spent on the program, rather than just, we needed new lines drawn in the gymnasium or something.
Yeah, we actually have the education policy, right?
Yes.
And it just says here, it just says local school assistance. And it's just $750 per year per school. And it's determined by the education officer, which is me. So
Right.
I was told in the past it's been used for, nutrition. But it could be used for clothing, like at the high school level. It depends on the school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. But
Yeah.
you need to ask the school how they might best
Mhm.
use that money, rather than just accepting the money from you and not bothering to let you know
Exactly.
that they've got it, let alone what they do with it.
Right.
Natalie, you've just given me actually the perfect bridge to how I want to close this workshop. And I don't mean that we have to close it off yet at all, but I'm going to take the bridge while I've got it. So often we have an award, an annual giving that we've done for years and years and years and years. The award could be in somebody's name. And at the time of that person giving the money for the award, we did terms of reference, or we did criteria sheets or guidelines, whatever we called it, right? And here we are 20 years later, we're still giving that $750 or that $500 bursary in that person's name for exactly the same thing we gave it for 20 years ago. But times have really changed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So when I really want us to think about IODE Canada's ask, listen, act.
Yeah.
So ask the recipient what their needs are.
Mhm.
Listen carefully and ask clarifying questions about what those needs are and how that money could best be used to impact the people receiving it the most. And then act on it. So I'll give you the national biggest example we have. When we started doing War Memorial scholarships back in the 1930s, it's earlier than that, I think.
Yeah,
Isn't it? The early 20s, because those scholarships were for men coming back from World War I, who had not been able to finish school or go on or even do anything post-secondary. And that was to help them get back into the community, get back into education, and go on their way after being in the war. Well, here we are today in 2024, and we are giving War Memorial Awards for PhD research for individuals who are at least in their second year of doing their PhD. The criteria for War Memorial has changed, I believe, 5 times over the years. And it changed because the needs changed. Now, that's a huge example. But we have little examples all the time, in our chapters about a bursary that was done in honor of our 20th anniversary or something in our chapter. We put it out there, and here we are now celebrating our 50th anniversary, and we've been doing this. Maybe it's the amount of money. Maybe it's the kind of recipient we're looking for. Maybe it's what it's going to be designated for. Maybe we're changing it from an improvement award to a STEM award because science, technology, education, and math is so important now. Who knows? but we've got to ask the questions. And you've brought an example here today that's a perfect example of that. Your policy is fabulous because it's open-ended. It doesn't restrict you. So $750 per school for local school assistants, that's lovely. You don't have your hands tied at all. But you also don't probably know what is needed most in this day and age in 2024 or coming up into 2025. And you've got a great opportunity and open door to ask the question. So Helen, thank you for bringing up the idea of the budget, because that's a perfect excuse or a little bit of adrenaline to go forward. And let's think about the ask, listen, act, and make sure that that's a lot of money going out in your community altogether. Let's make sure it's doing what it needs to do in the best possible way. But so perfect. You'd think I paid you to bring that one up, for sure. All right. One other question I wanted to ask you, and you've hit on two areas, is that how do you share the information through the year? So Myrna talked about the Google document that she keeps a record of, and then she shares with the chapter on an ongoing basis as things come up. How do you share that? What's what's it look like?
Okay, well, our executive meeting committee meets once a month, and then we produce, it's called an In Perspective magazine. And so that's done through the communications officer. So we give her our report monthly. It goes into the magazine, the Perspective magazine, which is emailed out to each member. So each member gets to read what each officer has done that month.
Wow, that's huge. Yeah, that's absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to adapt that because you've brought up two things in there. You've brought up a regular report, and it doesn't have to be monthly. It could be quarterly. It could be twice a year. It doesn't matter how that is. You've talked about submitting it to someone. Your chapter might be simply the secretary to go in the minutes of the meeting. You create a magazine, which is, wow, the next step up, which is amazing. Some people would call it a newsletter.
Yeah, newsletter. Yeah, it's a newsletter.
However it is. Now I'm going to take it one step further. How do we make sure, if we do it at a meeting and it goes in the minutes, or we were verbally or written, or we do it in that newsletter or magazine, how do we make sure our member, and I'm asking this to the whole screen, not just putting Natalie on the spot. How do we make sure the members get it? What happens if they weren't at that meeting? Or
well, ours is sent electronically. It's an email to each of the members.
Yes.
And we have hard copies available at our charity shop.
I love it. Okay. So Bev, what's your idea?
My idea is the first time you get the magazine or whatever, take a cup of tea or what have you, sit down and read till it's going out your ears and you can't stop. You've got every last bit of it.
It sounds
too many cups of tea, Bev.
It sounds like getting our Echoes magazine, and I want to open it, but I want to also wait till I actually have time to sit down and really enjoy it, not just do a quick flip through. So I love that, Bev. All right, now I like, there's a couple things that have come up there. So electronically is wonderful because that means that people who were not at the meeting or who did not hear it in a verbal report get it in writing. So that's fantastic. I heard that you also have hard copies in your New to You shop or your opportunity shop. You have a place in the community where you can put that out and have people read it. That's amazing. How else do we need to use hard copies? Because there is another way, another thing we have to really keep in mind about hard copies. Liz?
Well, I mean, two things. The first is that, I don't know, maybe in your chapter, everybody uses email. We still have a chapter, at least one member who doesn't. So somebody drops a copy off.
Really important.
The other thing is, where do we go? Where do you go beyond just your chapter?
Yeah.
Making sure that other people get to see it.
And that is absolutely the next step. So I'm really glad you brought that. We have one person in our chapter who is not of email as well. We have someone partnered with her who drives by her house at least once a week on a normal thing. And that person prints out everything we get electronically, and a good soul, and drops it off in her mailbox all the time. So we've got that arrangement too. And that is really important because you don't want technology to exclude someone. We use technology to include people. So we don't want it to go the other way. All right. How else, though? Liz has asked a really good question. How else do we let the community know what we're doing? Helen?
First of all, I think what we need to do, I put a little slip of paper in each award saying that if you do not want your name published, please let me know. And they, I give my phone number and email, and I've never received a no yet.
An opt-out.
Yeah. So after that, we put pictures on the website, because our chapter has a website. So we put pictures on the website. It goes in Facebook, and we do have a local paper still. So a picture is sent to the local paper of, especially we have a special award. Our chapter's name is Margaret Stokes chapter. So we have the Stokes Award. So we have a banquet in June where parents and the winners are invited. And it's a potluck banquet. And we honor the Stokes Award winners there. And their parents are there to find out about IODE. And we put the pamphlet, our little chapter pamphlet, in with the information and have it on the tables for the mothers to know. And then it's publicized. And so we've been having good luck with that. Our chapter's not quite as big as Maple Leaf as Natalie's chapter. But yes, it's we're half that size, Natalie.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm glad that you mentioned that about the social media. So you might be on Instagram, you might be on X, you might be on Facebook.
Right.
You've got those ways of getting it out, and that's a whole different clientele that you have to get out of there. Use hashtags. So hashtags use that will get people in your community that will see those things. And I know your chapter, Natalie, is really, really good at the getting the electronic message out there in your community as well.
That's right. Yeah, we have a Facebook page. We have the op shop page.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
And Helen's just mentioned there about awards and giving out more information about IODE, about the award. Maybe even it would be, where it came from, a little history on the award, just so that the individual receiving it knows where it's come from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always really good. And on tables at events and for people of the community. So there's lots of ideas there. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, literally. If you use a picture and about 25 to 50 words under the picture, you can do an awful lot with that. And I think social media has helped us get better at that way of publicizing. Few words and a good picture will tell the story very, very nicely. So great ways you have of sharing. Just don't forget to share with your chapter the good things, and not just to get the motion approved to do it every year or to do a new initiative, but the feedback and the impact, because that's the feel good. That's what makes our heart warm about IODE and lets us know, boy, oh boy, this is exactly why we do this.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not forget any of that. So I just did a quick check here as the last information was being given out. We have actually covered what some of that list of things were there that we wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Thanks to Natalie, we were able to do the Ask, Listen, Act and got that in very, very nicely when she started talking. Mm-hmm. Let's not forget that. And the other thing I would just like to sum up with, as we were talking about pictures and telling your story and narratives, remember, we are trying to collect as many pictures and short narratives as we possibly can from every chapter across this country. A picture and 25 to 50 words explaining what's going on, not giving a check, but maybe something else that depicts what you are doing. And let's send that off to the Echo's email address, and you'll never know where it's going to show up. There are 4 places right now where it might show up. It might show up on the IOD Canada website. Mm-hmm. It might show up in a future Echoes magazine. It might show up in an anagram. And it might show up on a display board at NAM at the end of May. Mm-hmm. Just send in the pictures, send in the little 2 or 3 sentence narrative about what's going on. Let's have it an action picture. Let's do as many as we can about education. We just had a great picture of all of the books that were bought for A Book for Every Child out of our chapter. And right away someone said, this is a great one for Echoes. Yes, it's a great one for Echoes, because in that picture of 39 books, there are a lot of Jean Troop Award winners and Violet Downey Award winners. And it's really, shows what we can do and the impact we can have for kids. So education's got lots to broadcast, as does services, as does citizenship. So let's not forget to do it. Any other comments or questions from anyone before we close off today?
Yeah, I had a bit of a conflict with mine. We do fundraising. We have a funding committee as well, which meets May and November, and they received letters from the school asking to provide money for, say, equipment in the school or anything like that. And then they provided the money. That didn't come through me as education officer, mm-hmm. which I thought was very strange, because I thought it pertained more to education. But they said, my committee said, no, it's not to do with education. It's going through the funding committee. So I was kind of told not to get involved in that. So I wasn't sure about that. I'm told to stick to those 3 things in the policy and not to be involved in anything else. So my hands are tied. Yeah.
How is it reported in your annual report? If they've given money to schools for equipment, who reports it and how is it reported in your annual report?
I would assume it would be the funding committee is giving that information over.
But it would go through either a secretary's report or an officer's report, or
I think it's going. Yeah, I don't know. It would be the funding officer report.
Maybe on the treasurer's report.
The money would be, Liz. Absolutely, the money would be. But I'm wondering where the narrative is about what it is that they've actually supplied. See, that would either be on services or education, I would think.
Just on the secretary's report, maybe.
It might be just in the secretary's
funding and finance committee policy.
Okay, so it's going through the treasurer.
Yeah, it must be the treasurers and funding and finance.
So it doesn't appear then on your annual report.
It doesn't come on mine because I don't have the information given to me.
But I mean, the treasurer's report's not shared with every officer.
No, and the treasurer's report does not have a narrative spot for a narrative. It is simply the ins and outs of the money for the auditor.
That's right. That's right.
Um,
So it should be on the secretary's report, I would feel, as a minimum.
because somehow or another, in your annual report that's communicated both to your chapter, to Ontario, IODE Ontario, and to IODE Canada, there should be a narrative about a summary of what you've actually done with your money in the community, what you've done with your time in the community, and how you've raised your money in the community. And so someone, I imagine the secretary is responsible for that, but I'm just wondering if they've purchased equipment for the schools, how that is reported through the channels, so that then the provincial education officer or services officer or whatever can report it, and then and the national can report it and include it in the entire province and country's report.
Yeah, I don't
did
know.
actually notice that on the website, last year's reports for Ontario are still there.
Is it? I can see reports on the
website under
I don't think I
See-
think just the national council or national officers can see that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's why I was just scanning through it. It's
Yeah.
Goderich, right?
Yeah. See, their policy, their criteria is to improve the quality of life for children, youth, and those in need through education, social services, and citizenship programs.
Right. That's the national IODE statement.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
But I'm just trying to find Goderich's report.
But that happened this year, did it, Natalie?
yes, it did.
So I would be tempted to, I think
I
Penny
can't find
had
anything from Goderich right now.
I think Penny and would probably know.
Penny Murray, and also our regent.
Yes.
Our regent is Heather.
And Heather, yes. I would be tempted to let them know that you were at this education workshop today, and that it was mentioned that maybe because equipment was supplied to a school, that it probably should be reported under education. And
that's very odd, because I'm going through last year's reports, and Goderich doesn't appear.
Oh, look under Maple Leaf chapter.
It's of course, that's my stupidity. My apologies.
Maple Leaf chapter. Yes.
No, that was just, it may not have been equipment. It may have been buying paint or something for the school. I can't remember what it was.
The resources of some sort.
Exactly.
Goderich chapter or the Maple Leaf chapter's money has
been. Where's the secretary's report? Give me a second.
And so once you mention it to Penny and Heather, if they need further, they can contact me, Helen Danby. They know me.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because we would really like to capture that. We don't want that just be numbers in the financial report, that they've expended X number of dollars on local assistance to the school. We want to capture what it was used for sure, because that's very significant.
Well, I think they do. I think they would. Like, it would be, because we have to vote on it, right? There is a written document that we all, when they bring it to membership, we all vote yes or no whether we're going to fund it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, but that I'm saying that then therefore it would go in and out of the treasurer's books and be reported on the treasurer's financial statement. That's fine. But that doesn't capture what was purchased or how it was distributed and how it supported the community.
Right.
And that's the part. That's what I was saying at the very beginning of this. The numbers are important, but they don't tell the story.
No.
We tell the story with words and pictures.
Yeah.
Numbers tell the story from a financial point of view, but not from the story point of view.
Right. And I don't collect hours either. We don't collect hours.
You don't?
No, I wasn't told to collect any hours.
Oh my goodness.
The citizenship officer
Yeah.
must collect the hours.
No, every time somebody works at your store, you should be collecting hours, like your membership. Because you have yes, and then they turn it into citizenship.
Okay, so we
Yes,
have a schedule on when we work.
yes, yep.
So I'm assuming the person who does the schedule puts those hours in that we've
Right.
worked.
But all of the other things that you do as officer, as education officer, all of the things that you do generally for IOD, you keep a record of your hours and then pass those on to the citizenship officer, yes?
No, I've never done that.
So for instance, today, today you have 2 volunteer hours for this workshop, and they should be reported as part of your donation of time in the month of November.
And if you read minutes of a meeting, you record the time that you do that. If you travel
somewhere.
Oh, I know. I volunteer for hospice, and I record all my hours for hospice. So yes,
don't record your hours for IOD.
I thought it was very strange. We used to many years ago, because I was funding chair and I was membership chair, and I did used to, but then when I took over education officer, I was told I didn't need to. My hours.
Well, they are invaluable because we can't do what we do.
And it used to be on the report too. It used to be on the year-end report. But
it's on the citizenship report, and that's supposed to be all of the hours for all of the chapter members for their volunteering. I mean, I look at your last year's citizenship report, recorded 8,000 hours. I don't know how they came up with that number, or whether that's underreported.
It's probably the volunteer hours in the opportunity shop, and maybe the number of people who are at their membership meetings, their monthly meetings.
Right. Yes. And then also we have the annual house tour too. We all volunteer for that as well.
Yeah. You did very well at your house tour.
I know.
Oh, they sold almost 1,200 tickets.
Wow.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I was there. I loved it.
Yeah. No, we did it was very good. Very well received.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I know we are the biggest chapter and there's so many. But as I say, education-wise, there's only one person, to go into these schools. And as I say, I don't live in Godrich. I live outside Godrich. So, yeah. Yeah.
Well, Natalie, I wish you luck because you give a lot of hours and they should be counted and recorded with the chapter.
Yeah. I know what my hours are. I can count them up.
Yeah.
They should be then submitted to the citizenship officer.
Yes.
Be recorded for the chapter. Because 8,000, when I consider how many members you have and amazing things your chapter does.
Yes, we do a lot. Geranium sales.
That's
really underreported.
That's an average of 100 hours per member per year. And it would certainly be more than that you're putting in.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah.
It's on from my perspective to calculate it back on how many hours.
Yeah.
And it's rewarding to see what you do too.
That's right.
Because they really do add up. They absolutely add up. Like the time you spend on the phone or on the email, writing those letters and those notes to the principal. That's all volunteer time. So, anyway, ladies, thank you for your participation today, your ideas, all the segues that you gave us into the topics that we wanted to cover. And I wish you all the best as you go back and finish out the 2024 year and tackle those annual report forms. And I look forward to some really spicy, interesting, engaging narratives as you tell your story. So
I like the spicy idea.
Yeah, spicy. Juice it up a bit.
That's right. Make me sit up and take notice. Where I have to go back to the front. What chapter is this?
and then I can't even remember the name of the chapter, just the town they live in.
Well,
my apologies, Natalie.
That's okay, no worries. I live in Blythe, so Blythe is my town.
Oh, yes.
Mhm.
I was
Is there
there.
a chapter in Blythe?
Sorry?
Is there an IODE chapter in that community?
In Blythe? No, there's only about 500 people. We're a very small community. We're
With
famous
great-
for our theater. We
I'm
have a
just going to
five.
say, with a
That's
great
what
theater
the
and
name
a
is.
great pizza restaurant and at the Cowbell.
Oh, the cowbell. Yes, the cowbell. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Mhm.
And Myrna, thank you very much for your participation today. And it
Yeah.
was really nice to meet you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, very nice to meet you today.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah.
See you
Bev,
soon.
good to see you again. And we'll hopefully see
Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you, Natalie.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.